Hello, and welcome to Make a Difference, the show about how volunteers are making a difference every day here in Montgomery County. I'm your host, Lorraine Driscoll. Today, we'll discuss how county residents can volunteer as a docent with Montgomery Parks to provide historical information and guided tours to visitors. Don't go away, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Make a Difference. I'm your host, Lorraine Driscoll. Today we'll be talking with Shirl Spicer, Countywide Museum Manager, and Jan McKee, Volunteer Docent for Oakley Cabin African. So Shirl and Jan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So you work Montgomery Parks. You work with Montgomery Parks, and particularly sort of the historical section. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. We work within the Cultural Resources Stewardship section within Montgomery Parks, and what we do is we are the stewards for the historical resources within the county park system. There are well over 100 historic sites within Montgomery County's park system, but they vary between graveyards, cemeteries, old buildings, buildings that are no longer occupied, and so forth. But we've got about half a dozen that are open to the public on a regular basis. And then there are other buildings that are utilized for office spaces. We have other nonprofits in them that are occupying the buildings. So there's a lot of mixed use within our historic buildings that we provide stewardship and interpretation for.
Okay.
So
Jan, you help interpret. You're a tour guide.
Right. I'm a docent at one of the historic sites at Oakley Cabin, and I provide tours to visitors who come by, when we're open. Now, it doesn't sound like a whole lot because it's like a cabin. So how long is a tour? So we try to really kind of flesh it out with a talk about the people who've lived there, its place in history, its place in the landscape, and answer any specific questions that people have, because a variety of reasons bring people by. They want to talk about the people, they want to talk about the construction of the cabin, they want to talk about various points in Montgomery County history and how that would have affected the cabin. So being a docent, you kind of have to be ready for any kind of question like that.
Wow. So, to tell the history, you need volunteers to help tell it. You can walk into the building and say, I get the feel, but you need someone. So Jan, tell me what motivated you to volunteer?
Well, I decided that after I finished graduate school, I'd gone to graduate school at night while holding down a full-time job, which consumed the totality of my life for several years. And suddenly I had all this spare time. And so I decided that there had to be something better than sitting around playing Tetris and eating cookies. And so I had always been interested in history. And I think it was Heritage Days. I went to the Heritage Days event over around the Rockville Courthouse, and there was a volunteer from Oakley Cabin handing out flyers, and I thought, oh, this is it. I'd never seen the cabin, I'd never been there, but it was history. It was the kind of history I like about everyday people. It's the people who really made Montgomery County, not just the rich people who lived in the nice houses. These people really worked to make the county something. So I thought, I'd like to find out more. And I started volunteering, and I've been there, I guess it's close to 15 years now.
So how many volunteers are there with the program?
with Oakley Cabin's African American Museum and Park, we have, we just recruited 2 more. So we are up to about 10 active volunteers, and then during special events like the Heritage Days that happen in June or the Emancipation Days, we will do a call out and sometimes get students to come in and volunteer for special events. But on a regular basis right now we have about a core of 10 now, and then looking to grow.
Because the students are really, they're terrific when they arrive, and they get those magic credit hours too.
Yes, SSL hours.
Yes, that's
absolutely.
a great motivator.
Oh yes, I'll do anything for the SSL hours.
Right, yeah.
And it's fun to do. They have, you have to write about what you learned and what you
absolutely.
experienced. I'm sure it's a rich, I'm sure people have a lot to say about what they learned in the process. So.
And the great part is the students, they get to engage in the making history. We always say that the docents and the guides help to bring history to life within the county, and they do that through a lot of hands-on activities. So during these special events, we have our docents not only providing guided tours, but we have living history demonstrations, we have crafters, we cook in our hearth.
Right.
We've tried that in the summer a couple of times, and we restrict that to fall and winter.
And music, we have great,
lots of music.
musicians,
Live music, absolutely.
some terrific bands have been there providing music all afternoon.
So if people want to volunteer with at Oakley Cabin or one of the other programs, how do they find you?
They can find us online at historyintheparks.org, or they can give me a call. It's 301-650-4373 is our program line. And they can talk with either myself, there is a program assistant, Tammy Shepard, who's there, who can assist them in applying for a volunteer position with Oakley Cabin, African American Museum, or we have Kingsley Schoolhouse, the Josiah Henson Museum and Park, there's Woodlawn Manor Cultural Park. We have a number of opportunities for folks depending on where their level of interest is. Even one of our oldest historic parks is the Agricultural History Farm Park over in Durwood. And they also are looking for volunteers. So Oakley and the Ag History Farm Park are two of the older of our sites that we've been interpreting, not as in age, but as the length of time that we've been interpreting within the Montgomery Park system.
And they're scattered all over the county too. So you don't really, if you don't want to travel very far, you don't have to.
There might be one near
There
you.
might be one near you.
And that you might meet people from your area. there. So I heard you say, now are you there fairly regularly on Saturdays, or does it vary?
Well, we're open 2 Saturdays a month.
Okay.
And I try to make it at least once a month.
Okay.
So I'm there kind of regularly. Now, unlike some sites, we're only open from April through November because this is an old cabin and we've got no heat, no electricity, no running water, no air conditioning. Right. Nobody wants to be there in January.
We could do a fire.
Well, we could, but
We could.
Yeah.
Not all the time.
But so it sounds very flexible. So student volunteers get training. Is that
Yes, all of the volunteers receive a pretty intensive interpretive training. It's multiple parts. We're getting ready to train a new group now in 2 parts. So there's classroom training where they learn the basics of interpretive techniques for historic sites, and then they will learn the specifics with the history of those specific sites, like with Oakley Cabin or the Josiah Henson or Kingsley Schoolhouse. And after that, they have the opportunity of shadowing with our, I call them, they're veteran guides, our experienced guides.
Awesome.
They will lead them through the process, right. And so it's a wonderful opportunity for them to engage and to learn the different materials and so forth. Plus, people bring their own special, I call it baggage of their knowledge based on where their passions lie.
Maybe you're a musician, maybe
it's music, maybe it's crafts.
we have one of our docents is a retired school teacher who actually is so terrific when families show up with kids. You know, because she can really get the tour to a level that a kid enjoys,
She
but
knows
doesn't.
what
Yeah,
kids of
she
different ages
is really want to hear and how much they can handle.
Right.
You know, and how to make it interesting for them. There isn't anything in the cabin that you can't touch.
Right.
So you know, we get the sad irons down, and you know, the kids just go crazy at how heavy they are. Right, it's the only time they're ever interested in laundry, you know.
That iron.
Iron days. Remember the washing? Because we have a
yeah.
creek that runs behind the cabin, the Reedy Branch Creek, and so we go with the buckets and they gather the buckets and they bring them back and they'll wash in the tub. And they'll string out the clothes on the clothesline for hours.
Right, and their mother says, you know, at home they just throw the
can't
clothes
get
on
them
the
to put 'em in the
floor.
hamper.
That's it.
Right.
Can't even get them to put them in the.
Oh, they love it.
So I heard you say just before we came by that sometimes you dress in period clothing. That's an option as well. Tell me about that.
Yes, well that's part of the program that sort of grew over time as it makes history come alive in a very different sort of way than my just standing here telling you the story of Oakley Cabin.
You can experience it more.
I portray a specific individual. I'm Elizabeth Magruder, who was the wife of the owner of the whole farm from 1837 to 1873. So she covers a mid-period of time. So I get dressed up in hoop skirts, and talk about life on the farm in the mid-19th century. And we also talk about medicine a lot because the farm is owned by Dr. Magruder. So medicine is an important part. But Mrs. Magruder talks about how Mother would have handled your home care because there were no hospitals,
Right.
you're not just going to run out to the CVS for aspirin.
Your pumice and your
Right,
whatever.
so we've had homeschool events that deal with herbal medicines and home
folk
remedies and folk
medicine,
medicine.
Professional.
And yes, and then Dr. Stonestreet, who's portrayed by Clarence Hickey, often comes by and he talks about the professional medicine at the time.
Okay.
Because there's a vast difference. And there's also a vast difference between the medicine that maybe a middle-class family would have used and the medicine that the African American community felt more comfortable with because they came from a different tradition and had different healing methods and different thoughts about it. So they very often were not trustful of Dr. Magruder.
Professional doctor.
Right.
So
right.
yeah, so
So different.
we talk about all the differences and the different things that maybe people approached. One time we were doing a homeschool event,
Oh yeah.
and this little kid showed up late, and they were late because he had been running around the house and he had knocked into the fire extinguisher and he had a big lump on his head. So we actually found a 19th century herbal remedy that we could make, and
Oh,
we ground up the dried sage and mixed it with vinegar and asked his mother if it's okay, and we liberally applied it to his forehead, and he ran around all day with this stuff drying on his head, telling me every
we
time.
would check in and be like, how do you feel? He's
Right,
like, I feel
and that
better.
brings history alive, and he kept saying,
Right.
I feel better, I feel better. And I
Oh.
kept telling his mother, use modern ice when you get home. You know.
That's great.
So, so volunteers, they get training. They have a flexible opportunity. So,
Yes.
And same with students. You can come a couple times, or
We have the volunteers. Oakley Cabin is open the second and fourth Saturdays from April until the first Saturday of November, and we accept volunteers ages 14 and up.
Okay.
And when we get groups that come for special events, if let's say we've gotten classes that have come, or church groups that have come, their youth groups have come, if they come with a supervising adult with them, that's fine. And oftentimes they will lead the crafts that the children will do that come with families, or the old-fashioned games and the
Awesome.
historic games they'll
This
play.
sounds so exciting, and unfortunately we're out of time. Can you tell us one more time? Someone wants to volunteer. How do they find you?
historyintheparks.org, or they can call. And when you go to the website, just scroll down and you'll see Historic Sites Volunteer Program. Click the button and there will be links to the application for each of the different positions that are available.
Perfect.
Pretty easy.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We've been talking today with Shirl Spicer, Countywide Museum Manager, and Jan McKee, Volunteer Docent for Oakley Cabin African. For more information about volunteering in Montgomery County, please contact the Volunteer Center at 240-777-2600 or visit their website at montgomeryvolunteer.org. And remember, as a volunteer, you can make a difference.